The chandelier dining hall glittered with gold, but all eyes turned to the boy in the corner, the son of the cleaning lady, holding a tray far too heavy for his narrow shoulders. When the Arab millionaire mocked him with a sneer, asking what a janitor's son could possibly know of the world, the boy quietly set the tray down, lifted his chin, and replied, "I speak 9 languages." The room fell silent until laughter erupted, but what followed wiped the smirk from the millionaire's face forever. In a mansion where marble floors echoed with the footsteps of the powerful, Malik moved like a shadow. He was the son of a woman few noticed, the black cleaning lady who polished silver until it gleamed and scrubbed floors until they could mirror the chandeliers above. To the guests who came and went, Malik was invisible, just a boy carrying trays or collecting coats, his eyes lowered and his words kept hidden. But what no one knew was that Malik was listening, always listening. While diplomats argued in clipped English, he memorized their tones. When foreign traders shared jokes in Spanish, he smiled silently at their punchlines. When a Russian investor cursed under his breath, Malik understood every syllable. At night, when the grand rooms emptied, he would slip into the library, fingertips brushing across forgotten books, teaching himself page after page until his eyes burned. His mother saw it in him, the hunger, the brilliance, and yet she warned him, voice hushed, as though wisdom itself were dangerous. Don't let them see. Malik, knowledge frightens men who believe they own the world. To them, you are only the cleaner's boy. If you ever shine a bright, they will try to put out your light. So he stayed quiet. He bowed when expected, kept his gaze down, and became the kind of boy who blended into the walls. But inside, his mind blazed. One evening, the mansion prepared for its grandest dinner yet. Guests arrived in silken robes and tailored suits, their laughter swelling under the glitter of crystal chandeliers. Malik carried a silver tray of wine glasses, weaving silently between them, until a voice cut through the noise. It was Karim Al-Azir, the Arab millionaire whose fortune filled the very halls Malik worked in. His smile was sharp, his tone dripping with amusement as his eyes landed on the boy. "Tell me," Karim said loudly enough for the room to hear, "what could the son of a cleaning woman possibly have to offer a room like this?" The guests chuckled. Malik froze, the tray trembling ever so slightly in his hands. His mother's warning rang in his ears. He could bow his head, laugh along, and remain the silent shadow he had always been, or he could finally let the world see the fire he had been hiding. And for the first time, Malik lifted his chin. The silence in the dining hall lingered after Karim Al-Azir's taunt. Crystal glasses gleamed under chandeliers, and forks hovered midair as the wealthy guests waited for the boy's reaction. Malik's tray weighed heavy in his hands, but his spirit felt even heavier. He could hear his mother's warning echo in his mind. Never let them see how much you know. And yet something inside him stirred, something that refused to stay hidden. He set the silver tray down carefully on the long oak table, its polished surface reflecting the golden glow of candles. Then, with a steadiness that startled even himself, Malik straightened his shoulders, looked at Karim, and spoke. But he did not reply in English. Instead, he opened his mouth and let out a stream of perfect French, crisp and lyrical. He took the very toast Karim had raised moments earlier, a toast Karim had clumsily butchered with broken phrases, and delivered it flawlessly, word for word. With the ease of a Parisian diplomat, gasps rippled across the table. A few guests laughed softly, delighted by the surprise. Others blinked, struggling to reconcile the boy in servant's clothes with the elegant flow of language pouring from his lips. One of the French delegates, a balding man with silver-framed glasses, leaned forward in astonishment. "Say impeccable," he murmured. "Impeccable." But Karim, he only smirked. The smirk widened, then cracked into booming laughter that filled the hall. He slapped his hand against the table, nearly toppling his wine glass. "A parrot," he roared. "That's all you are, a parrot. You repeat sounds you've heard. Why, you are still just a boy in rags." The guests, half uncertain, chuckled along with him, though some shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Malik, however, did not flinch. His face was calm, his eyes steady, the kind of steadiness that unsettled men who expected fear. "Okay, Vudites," Malik said smoothly in Spanish now. His voice slipped into the language as though he had been born beneath. "Madrid, son, but parrots cannot debate politics." He turned to a Spanish banker seated near the end of the table, catching the man's eye. "Sigor," Do you agree that the new trade laws in Madrid will make exports far more difficult for your industry? The banker's eyebrows shot up. He stammered in surprise before responding, and soon the two exchanged quick, animated remarks, Malik not missing a beat. The banker even chuckled at Malik's sharp observation about tariffs, as if speaking to a fellow professional rather than a servant's son. By now, the laughter in the room had softened into murmurs of intrigue. Glasses clinked faintly as guests leaned forward, whispering, but Malik wasn't finished. Before the millionaire could interrupt, he pivoted again, this time addressing a stern Russian oil tycoon seated nearby. In flawless Russian, Malik asked about recent changes in Siberian pipelines, a topic he had read about in the forgotten newspapers stacked in the servants' quarters. The tycoon's frosty demeanor melted into surprise. His heavy jaw shifted into a grin, and he replied in kind, testing Malik's skill with an idiom few outsiders ever understood. Malik answered without hesitation. Now the gasps were louder, and Kareem's smirk faltered. The room, once filled with laughter, had grown heavy with unease. Guests exchanged glances, not mocking, but measuring. The boy no longer looked like a shadow in the room. He looked like a storm. Still, Kareem was not a man who accepted humiliation easily. His pride was a fortress, and he would not let a servant's son scale its walls. He leaned back in his gilded chair, narrowed his eyes, and waved a jeweled hand. Dismissively, tricks, he sneered. That's all they are, words strung together. What use is language without wisdom? What use is a tongue that can repeat, but not think? His voice cut sharply through the whispers, dragging the room back into tension. All eyes flicked between the millionaire and the boy, waiting to see if Malik would retreat or rise. Malik's heart pounded in his chest, but his expression remained calm. He thought of his mother, of the endless nights polishing silver while he sat beside her, practicing words she never understood but always encouraged. He thought of the way she told him to remain invisible, but also how she looked at him, sometimes with pride too great to hide. Now, before this table of wealth and arrogance, Malik knew he could not stay silent. He took a single step forward, his voice low but steady. "You asked for wisdom," he said, the words carrying across the hall. "Then let us speak not of parrots, but of people. Let us speak of the world that exists beyond your walls of gold." His tone was no longer the timid whisper of a servant's boy. It was the measured cadence of someone who had listened, learned, and understood far more than anyone expected. The guest fell utterly silent. Kareem's eyes glittered with challenge, but there was something else beneath it, a flicker of unease. His pride demanded that he mock the boy again, yet his instincts warned him this child was no mere shadow. Malik had revealed only a glimpse of his brilliance. The real revelation was still to come, and as he met Kareem's gaze, unwavering, Malik knew this was only the beginning. The air in the banquet hall had grown heavier, as though the chandeliers themselves bent lower, listening. Guests who had once been eager to laugh now sat still, their polished silverware abandoned mid-meal. Malik stood tall, no longer the shadow, boy carrying trays, but something else entirely, a figure no one had expected. Yet no one could ignore. Kareem Al-Hazir leaned back in his grand chair, his jeweled fingers tapping impatiently against the table. His smirk had returned, though it wavered like a candle fighting against the wind. "Words," he said, his voice sharp, almost brittle. "Pretty words. But tell me, boy, what can words truly do? What wisdom can a servant's son offer men who move nations?" The challenge was spoken like a dagger thrown across the room. Malik did not flinch. He inhaled deeply, then began to speak, not in English, not in French, not in Spanish or Russian. His voice slipped into Arabic, but not the smooth, standard Arabic the guest occasionally used for ceremony. No, this was something far rarer, the earthy, intimate dialect spoken in a small village far from marble halls and business towers. It was the dialect Kareem's late father had spoken, the tongue that had shaped Kareem's childhood, the tongue he had buried beneath polished suits and foreign boarding schools. The sound of it struck Kareem like a thunderclap. His smirk faltered, then vanished altogether. Malik's words cut the silence like a blade. "You ask what wisdom I have. I will tell you. I was a boy when I first heard your father bargain away futures in the embassy halls, the very halls my mother scrubbed at night until her hands bled. I was sweeping near the doors, silent, unseen, as always, but I understood every word. Deals struck not in fairness, but in greed. Promises made to men who would never see justice. It was there I learned how the powerful build empires. The millionaire's face drained of color. His jeweled hand froze above the table, trembling ever so slightly. Around him, guests shifted uneasily in their seats, their earlier amusement turning into sharp-edged curiosity. Malik stepped forward, his voice steady, his gaze unflinching. Your father thought no one heard him but his partners. He thought the servants were deaf, mute, invisible. But I was there, and I listened, and I remembered. And tonight, I speak. A murmur rippled through the room. The French delegate frowned. The Russian tycoon leaned forward, suddenly intent. The Spanish banker glanced nervously at Kareem, then at Malik. Kareem forced a laugh, a thin, brittle sound that carried none of his earlier confidence. Stories, he barked. Children's tales. What do you know of business? Boy, of sacrifice. You repeat words overheard, nothing more. But even as he spoke, his voice trembled. His hands betrayed him, fingers clenching and unclenching as though trying to grasp control that was already slipping away. Malik did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calmness was its own weapon. You ask what I know. I know that. Your father taught you wealth was power, but he also taught you fear. Fear of truth, fear of memory, fear of the voices you tried to silence. Look around you, Kareem. Every man at this table knows what it feels like to be measured by more than gold. They hear me now, and they wonder if a servant's son remembers what you wanted forgotten. What else might rise from the shadows? The guests were utterly still. Some shifted uncomfortably, not out of boredom, but out of recognition. They, too, had secrets. They, too, had silenced voices they wished would never speak. Malik's words were not just aimed at Kareem. They were a mirror for everyone in the room. Kareem's laughter died completely. His face was pale, the veins at his temples throbbing. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His eyes darted across the guests' faces, searching desperately for support, for someone to sneer with him, to dismiss the boy's words. But no one did. Malik's eyes, dark and unblinking, remained locked on Kareem. I was a child, but even then, I knew. He continued softly, the powerful are only powerful so long as the rest remain silent. You built your empire on silence, on men and women like my mother, who bowed their heads and cleaned your footprints while you laughed. But silence does not last forever. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. A fork slipped from someone's hand and clattered against a plate, startling in the hush. The chandeliers flickered as if even the lights strained to hear. Kareem's lips parted again, but his voice failed him. He tried to laugh once more, but the sound caught in his throat, a dry, broken cough. The proud, unshakable millionaire, the man who had mocked Malik as nothing more than a servant's boy, was shaking. His hands trembled so violently now that his wine glass toppled, spilling dark red across the pristine white tablecloth like blood spreading through snow. No one moved to help him. All eyes remained fixed on Malik, the invisible boy who had become the unmasker of kings. Malik's chest rose and fell, steady, calm. He did not gloat. He did not smile. His face carried no trace of triumph, only truth. And it was that truth, quiet, simple, undeniable, that shook Kareem more than any insult could have. The room no longer saw Malik as a servant. They no longer saw him as a boy. They saw him for what he truly was, a witness, a keeper of memory, a voice the powerful had tried to erase, but could not. And as Malik's final words in that rare, intimate Arabic dialect faded into silence, the guests understood something else. This was no accident. This was reckoning. The banquet hall was no longer alive with laughter or music. The golden chandeliers still glittered above, but their light seemed cold now, casting sharp shadows across the faces of men and women who once believed themselves untouchable. Kareem Al-Hazir sat stiff in his chair, his knuckles white as they clutched the table's edge. His jeweled cufflinks glimmered, but his power, the aura of unshakable superiority he carried everywhere he went, had cracked. His mocking laughter had vanished, replaced by silence. His eyes darted nervously, his body trembling like a man stripped bare in front of the world. And before him stood Malik, no longer the silent boy in servant's clothing, no longer the invisible shadow carrying trays. He stood tall, chest steady, eyes burning with something that was more than defiance. It was truth. The room leaned toward him, waiting. Even the candles seemed to flicker lower, their flames swaying in anticipation. Malik drew in a breath. Then, slowly, he began to speak. First, In English, the language of trade and diplomacy. His voice was steady, deliberate. Greatness is not in the wealth you inherit, nor in the power you demand. It is in what you build, what you give, what you endure. The guests stilled, their eyes widening. Then, without pause, his words shifted seamlessly into French. His tone grew elegant, lyrical. Le héritage ne vous définit pas. La dignité ne se transmet pas comme une fortune. Elle se forge dans la foi de l'effort. Dans le courage silencieux, dans la vérité person. No style. Heritage does not define you. Dignity is not passed down like fortune. It is forged in the fire of effort, in the courage of silence, in the truth no one dares to speak. A murmur rippled across the table. The French delegate, who had once smirked at Malik, now lowered his gaze in respect, but Malik did not stop. He moved into Spanish, his words carrying rhythm and fire. La grandeza no es un regalo que nes contigo. Es la abuela que dices, la memoria que siembras, el respeto que otros elegant dar. Greatness is not a gift you are born with. It is the footprint you leave, the memory you plant, the respect others choose to give you. One of the Spanish guests raised a hand to his chest, visibly moved, then came rushing, deep, resonant, sharp like steel. Power is not in wealth, but in what remains when wealth disappears. True strength is in the person who cannot be humiliated. The Russian tycoon's stern expression softened. He gave Malik a single nod, slow and deliberate, the kind of acknowledgement reserved only for equals. The languages poured from Malik like a river breaking its dam. German, Italian, Mandarin, Portuguese, each one spoken with perfect precision, each carrying the same truth, but wrapped in a new rhythm, a new cadence, so that every guest in the room could hear his message in the language of their heart. Gasps turned into silence, silence into awe. Some pressed their napkins to their lips as if to hold back tears. Others leaned forward, drinking in every word. And then, finally, Malik's voice dropped into Arabic. Not the polished form of speeches, not the globalized tongue of business, but the rare dialect, raw and intimate, that Kareem's late father had once spoken to him. Al, izada laysat mi torathuhu li waladika. Al, izada mi yabnu inafsuhu. By Emily Wakabrihi. Dignity is not what you hand to your son. Dignity is what he built for himself with his work and with his patience. The words struck like thunder. Kareem flinched as though the ghost of his father himself had spoken. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his eyes glistening with something that looked dangerously close to fear. Malik paused. The room was breathless. He let the silence stretch, a silence that spoke louder than any insult. Then he spoke again. This time not to Kareem, but to everyone. His voice rose, steady and commanding, flowing through all 9 languages, weaving them into one seamless declaration, not just words, but music, a chorus of voices carried within a single boy. His speech was not about wealth, not about revenge. It was about dignity, humanity, the brilliance of those who are unseen. Every word rang with the weight of truth, that greatness is not inherited like gold, but earned through struggle, resilience, and the refusal to be erased. When his final word fell, the hall erupted. For a heartbeat, it was only silence, stunned, reverent silence. Then applause thundered, filling every corner of the room. Some guests rose to their feet, clapping with a fervor that bordered on reverence. Others remained seated, but their eyes shone, their hands pressed together, caught in the weight of what they had just witnessed. Malik stood in the center of it all, motionless, his face calm, as though he were not basking in triumph, but delivering a truth that had been waiting to be spoken all his life. Kareem Al-Hazir did not clap. He sat rigid, pale, his hands trembling against the white tablecloth. His lips parted, but no words came. At last, in a voice hoarse and broken, he whispered, "Who are you?" The applause quieted, eyes turning back to the boy who had shattered the illusion of wealth and superiority. Malik's gaze drifted to the far end of the hall, where the door had quietly opened. There, half hidden in the shadows, stood his mother. Her apron was still dusted with flour, her hands worn and calloused, her eyes wide with disbelief. And yet, in their depths shimmered something fierce, pride, pure, and uncontainable. Tears welled, slipping down her cheeks as she looked at her son, the boy who had carried trays through golden halls, now standing taller than any king. Malik's lips curved, not into a smile, but into the faintest line of resolution. He turned back to Cream, and with a voice steady and final, he answered, "I am the son of the woman you tried not to see." The words struck harder than any revelation, harder than any insult. For in that single sentence, Malik reclaimed everything: his mother's dignity, his own worth, and the truth that could no longer be buried beneath marble floors and jeweled cuffs. The room was still. Some guests lowered their heads in shame, others closed their eyes, as if in prayer. And Malik, the boy who had once moved through these halls like a shadow, stepped back, his silence now more powerful than the richest man's roar, because, in that moment, everyone understood true power is not written in titles or carved into wealth. True power is the fire that survives in those the world refuses to see, until one day, it burns bright enough to blind them all.